Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, we'll be waiting for 30 seconds for everyone to be joining in. In the meanwhile, let's share the feeds, inshallah, on our respective pages so that people are able to, inshallah, join in. And I'll just start with the introductions beyond that. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone, whoever is joining. Please share the feeds that people are able to, inshallah, seek benefit from this session today. And we'll be starting in 15 seconds from now, inshallah.
I tried to upload avatar picture. Again, I'm
That's
not
okay,
sure.
that's okay. You're live now, sister. It's okay.
Okay, inshallah. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and alhamdulillah nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So jazakallah khair for joining. Alhamdulillah, we've got a full house today. Jazakallah khair to all the panelists, which I'll be doing the introduction inshallah very shortly. But I will just request everyone to be sharing the feeds, guys, because obviously this is an extremely important topic for a whole host of us, which are actually not homeschooling or homeschooling, either way. Because especially in today's climate, what we are foreseeing is that this trend of homeschooling is going to grow. And obviously a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, a lot of schools, unfortunately, specifically schools, we've done this homeschooling, the Islamic schooling session before. A lot of the schools, unfortunately, are closing down, unfortunately, and this is true for Saudi Arabia. I'm sure this would also be true for other parts of the world as well. And a lot of parents are not going to be sending their children specifically when the schools open in September onwards. So not only that, but the overall topic of homeschooling, the ideas, the focus. Alhamdulillah, we have got a brilliant panel which I'm going to be doing introduction to. So we have Mrs. Iroda Ahmed. So she's based in Saudi Arabia. She has done her master's in teaching English, the master's in education in the English language, as well as the BA in English as well. And she actually teaches English also in the university, and she has loads and loads of experience, basically you can say more than 17, 18 years of experience within the homeschooling domain. And she, mashallah, runs the Raising Young Scholars Academy as well in Saudi Arabia. I will be posting the profiles of each of the panelists, not here, but in the comment section, because I don't have much space to put in the profiles of all the panelists. Now, we also have Abdullah, Sister Hala from Egypt. She is, mashallah, based in Turkey nowadays. She spent a fair portion of her life in Saudi Arabia as well. And mashallah, she is a mother to 3 beautiful kids, which all are, mashallah, homeschooled. And mashallah, you can consider her as an authority in homeschooling in the Arabic world. Basically, you can call her one from amongst the pioneers of homeschooling in the Arab world, mashallah. And she has a very good page, a Facebook page called Super Hawa, which I will again, like I said, paste the link to. And mashallah, she also has a lot of writings in various newspapers as well. Then we have Sister Hamza, Sister Mona, and mashallah, sister again has a lot of experience with regards to you can say the extracurricular side of homeschooling, as well as her own children, mashallah, as well. And she, mashallah, sister is a Harvard graduate, both bachelor's as well as master's from there. And she also has lived in Saudi Arabia for a number of years in Riyadh, where she actually started on with a number of programs for the outdoor activities for the kids, which were kind of homeschooled in Riyadh. And nowadays, she will tell you maybe more about her profile, as we move along, what she's doing currently, and we'll be, inshallah, asking her. Then we also have Sister Lara. Mashallah, Sister Lara is a revert to Islam, and she actually has been, again, homeschooling her kids. I think Sister Laura moved some years back from Germany to UK, where she is currently based now. And basically, Sister Laura has a project called My Moon, which we will be speaking about a little bit. And we would like to, inshallah, ask her to tell her more about that project. What exactly is that project all about? You know, why is she doing that project? And, you know, how can we support her, inshallah, in whatever she is trying to do? So this is our panel. Jazakallah khair once again to all the audience, everyone which has joined in. So I think what I'm going to be doing now, I'll divide actually the panelists into two halves. Yeah. So we have, mashallah, brother Azim. He is a parent. So brother Azim, you know, he has not joined us as kind of a homeschooling expert, although he is. Yeah. So I haven't introduced brother Azim, which I'm doing right now. So brother Azim, mashallah, is a parent to, mashallah, I think 9 beautiful children as well, which are all, I think, homeschooled. Brother Azim, please correct me if I am not wrong. And mashallah, again, he has this great experience as a parent, you know, of these lovely kids, which have all been homeschooled all the way from ages 5 to 22 years of age. So again, from brother Azim's perspective as a parent, we will be asking certain questions to him as well, and then, you know, learn from his experience how he has coped, etc. Today is going to be a fairly long show, yeah, because we have a lot to hear from the panelists. This show is not divided into two halves. So that is the reason I'm again asking everyone to please share the feeds with everyone, that more and more people, inshallah, are able to hear from the expert panel which we have. Okay, so I think enough of the introduction, fairly long one for today. So I think I'll be starting with Sister Abdullah, because I think perhaps she's maybe Sister Rhoda and Sister Hala are the senior most in the panel today. So I think I'll start with Sister Abdullah. So Sister, basically, tell us a little bit about your journey, basically how you started, and obviously you have learned through experience, because when you started, I think there was really nothing as far as the Arab world was concerned. The homeschooling was, you know, there was nothing much. So if you can share your journey in brief, and then we'll move in from there, inshallah.
We started in when my kids was around 3 years old, and this was like 2007. And I heard my neighbors, they were Americans, and we were in Arab country, and they were mentioning that they don't send their kids to school, and there's something called homeschooling. This was the shock for me, you know. This was the beginning. What do you mean by homeschooling? And then I started looking and searching, and I really liked the idea. Then we started doing homeschooling, how we imagined what can be homeschooling. Then when my son turned to 6 years old, we got a chance to go back to Egypt, and I sent them to school for 2 years. And this is when I noticed the difference between the life of a student in a school and the life of a homeschooler. The student in a school, you know, like he don't have a life like a child. He's just a student. Then after 2 years, we decided that no, it's enough for us to put our kids in schools and let's go back to homeschooling. You know, maybe if I didn't try homeschooling before, it would be hard for me to go back for homeschooling. But because I tried it and I saw how my kids were, you know, before they got school and how they were in schools, I decided that homeschooling is best for us. Since 2012 until now, we are right way, you know, we are homeschooled, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah, Sister Abdullah. Now, Sister Rhoda, I think
Yep.
we'll be starting the questions probably from your side.
Okay.
So, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, basically, as a teacher, you know, as a kind of a fairly, you can say, long experienced teacher with regards to various kind of communities you've been working in. Now, what would you say to someone who wants to put his children in a regular school, and his argument is going to be that, you know, there is more focus in the school, you know, there are subject teachers available in a school, there is more kind of focus, there's more skill set available, then why should one homeschool the kids?
I think for me, how do you picture education? Yes, there are specific subject teachers available at school, but how do you picture education? You know, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's your first impression when you hear the word education? For me, it was basically based on my own experience, because I was a teacher long before I became a mother. It was a schoolroom crammed with 30 bored children, and really it's a myth to say that children will get quality teachers because they have qualified teachers in their subject areas. A lot of the time teachers really struggle to give one-on-one time to these children, and it's really a myth to say that you know, every child will get. No, teachers really struggle to give that one-on-one time. And from my experience, you know, learning is based on relationship. Yani students should be able to form meaningful relationship with their teacher to be able to learn, in order to learn, because the relationship is the essence of learning, right? And a lot of the time teachers struggle to establish the meaningful relationship with their students, because a lot of time is wasted managing classroom, especially at primary school, you know, managing behavior and just saying, hey, sit down, don't pull chair, do this, don't do that. That kind of classroom management or behavior management consumes up a good amount of time. So it really isn't you know, right to think that 1 hour of physics will give your child at school 1 hour of physics lesson. You know, what does your child get in that 1 hour? Maybe 5 to 10 minutes, if that. You know, I would say 5 minutes. Based on my experience, they would get maybe like very little one-on-one time. So whereas in homeschooling, I think even though the mother may not be qualified in that subject area, but rather than touch basing various topics within that subject, they can learn something at much deeper level. They can focus on something specifically that the child is interested at a much deeper level. And, you know, book learning generally, now we have so much information available at our fingertips, you know, right, left and center. With a little bit of research, I think every parent can teach their own children if they're able to. They don't need formal qualifications or degree or any sort of, you know, formal qualifications to be able to teach.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Brother Azim, would you agree to this? What has been stated? What has been your experience?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. She's absolutely right. And especially if you take this in the context of different nations. I've personally myself I'm a a product of a school education, whether it was in Saudi Arabia or it was in Canada. But now I'm raising my kids in Pakistan, and I know most developing countries, their education system leaves a lot to be desired. And a lot of the teachers that we have, they may have the qualifications, but that doesn't mean they have the passion. They don't have the self-interest to actually educate your children. So that's why a lot of the people here in Pakistan, we've started calling it home education versus just homeschooling, because the objective is not to pick up a school structure and bring it into your house. Rather, it is to develop in your children the desire and the ability to learn. And once they have that, whether they're sitting in front of their parents, or they're sitting outside in an office, or they're sitting in a college or a university, they will know how to proceed further. So absolutely right. And that the teachers don't necessarily have all the skills, have all the knowledge. A lot of times they're just sort of trialing and erroring and on the kids. And as the sister rather rightly said, I know in my time growing up in a school, you know, a lot of the times the teacher didn't have any control over us, wasn't really teaching us either. But we were just, you know, the focus was just to get from grade A to grade B, and fine, we did that and it was over. Is that what we want for our children? So our experience has been to a great extent, and I keep quoting this to people, that just like choosing which school your child goes to is a choice parents make, the choice that we made was that, well, we don't want to send them to any school, and we want to teach them ourselves. Is it the 100% the right decision to make? Allahu Alam, we'll find out.
You will come to it. He'll inshallah come to it.
The point is, we don't. It's not necessary that just because the person teaching doesn't have those qualifications as off the cuff. And in many countries you have access to tutors. So if the mother,
sorry, brother, just because I want to have a chance for everyone to inshallah speak. Yeah, so inshallah, let's just request to the panelists to keep the answers inshallah short, because mashallah we've got a large group, and we want to inshallah give a chance to everyone. So basically, Sister Hamza, now coming to you. Now, it is obviously quite stressful for the parents to deal with teaching kids. Your brother Azim is saying that just from his perspective, he wants his kids to be educated at home. But this is quite stressful for the parents, especially for those parents which are not really groomed, which don't have the required kind of skill set. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, it can be quite frustrating. Yeah. So how does one cope with it? What is your guidance there?
Yeah, well, I wanted to point out, actually related to what Sister Irada and Brother Azim said, you want to kind of flip the thought of what it means to be a teacher when you're a parent. So even teachers themselves, we want to think of ourselves more like facilitators and not necessarily teachers. So there's sort of a conventional concept that a child is kind of like a bowl or a cup, and then we have all this information and we're just kind of filling them up with what we know. But that's not how knowledge works. There's so much out there that the parent doesn't know, that teachers don't know. So as Brother Azim said, we're preparing our children to learn, not necessarily from us, but to be able to receive knowledge from wherever it may come from. And so when parents recognize that the knowledge we're giving them isn't necessarily has to be knowledge we know, we're giving them a process of learning. And we're facilitating by providing them the resources, whether it be books, online, other people, things we know. We're giving them that process of learning, not necessarily the actual quantified knowledge. So knowledge can't be quantified. There's going to be so much out there. We're never, ever going to be able to master it and then teach. But when we think of it as a journey that we're doing with our children together, that we're helping them to become learners and we're learning with them. And that takes a lot of pressure off of the parent to have to master or know something first before they can show their child. But they can teach them how to get that help if they need it. So up to a certain grade point, I would feel most parents, we've been through school ourselves. So we have kind of these basic skills. We could probably teach the alphabet and reading and this kind of stuff. But we're going to hit a point where we're like, okay, I don't really understand this math question anymore. I don't really understand maybe the writing, techniques to make an expository paper. So I can find that extra help if they need that. But that being said, when we're teaching our children, we want to give them kind of real life skills as well. And that's something that I think a lot of mothers, especially, we discount from ourselves. Like we tend to think, oh, if I didn't finish university, if I didn't get all this stuff, I'm not qualified to teach my kids, which is so not true. Because what you're teaching them is also life skills, how to run a house, how to stay organized, how to keep yourself clean, how to interact with your friends, how to respect, people. You're teaching them character. It's not just about academics. And often the academics, for me, I actually, though I come from a very strong academic background, I don't emphasize that with my children. I encourage them to love learning without the pressure. And I'm encouraging them more to be like good people, to learn how to contribute and to gain skills they can actually use to help other people with, right?
Okay, Jazakallah khair, I think very well said. Now, Sister Lara, from your perspective, again, we would like to ask you kind of a related question with regards to specifically the project which you have. How did you conceive this project, Maimoon, and what was your rationale behind the project? And where are you, what is the status of the project? And if you would like to please tell us a little bit about your domain, inshallah.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, first of all, and thanks a lot for your invite. It's an honor to be here. Yes, Fair enough. I'm to be honest, I'm just a new homeschooler due to the global lockdown, like other thousand parents as well. And I have faced a lot of challenges and put into a very difficult situations sometimes. And I realized, as this is Sister Mona Hamza just said, I need advice. I need help. I can't manage it by myself. And Alhamdulillah, and last Ramadan, I started to think about a way how to give also help for parents, to give them extra support, especially to implement learning Arabic and Quran. So that's the way how the project came up, that we want to give the opportunity that teachers from around the world can start working with us, and parents around the world can find teachers in their native language. That means, especially for myself, I'm German, and I really struggled when I once I lived in Germany to find something in German-speaking Arabic teacher, as German-speaking Quran teacher. That was also my passion before. I need something that everybody from around the world can find a teacher in their native language. So this is, I believe, a huge benefit from our project, that we give the possibility to help parents, which we're planning to implement as well, like a parent forum in our website, to give anonymous advice to each other. As we know, communication is the key. Communication for the parents, between them, each other, but also communications between the children. But I don't want to tell you too much. I think this is roughly how the idea comes up. And
Sure.
yes, and we think it will be a huge relief for many parents, especially for Arabic and Quran, to implement it in their life, to implement Islamic values.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sister Laura. I think, inshallah, we'll be speaking more about your project as time progresses. Now, Sister Abdullah, now, how do we manage the conflict within siblings? Once the kids are homeschooled, how do you manage this conflict?
We like to do some team building games, and I think this worked very well with us, like how you can work as a team, and the different levels can help, for the older to review what he used to take when he was younger, and for the younger to get benefit from what he listened from the older. And, it's not hard that you have the different levels of homeschoolers in the same house, uh, I don't think it is hard, but just some team buildings and some trips, some advices for the older to understand how to deal with the younger, and to give the younger some advices to deal and give some respect for the older. This can manage the house, and it all depends on the family. I think the family is the main core for the homeschooling. If you build a good family, you can have a good homeschooling.
Okay. Now, Sister Eroda, if we continue from Sister Abdullah's reply, now, obviously, in order to have this team building activity and exercises, the most important thing will be that there needs to be a very well-disciplined home, in the first place, correct?
Yes.
So how do we achieve that well-disciplined kind of house?
I think I just want to say a couple more things about how about sibling conflict and how to manage that. I think we need to have very realistic expectations of our children. Like, I have 6 children, right, and they are, each one of them are so different. When I used to work as a teacher at school, sometimes I used to teach siblings, and I used to wonder, like, they come from the same household and the same parent, how can they be so different, like in the way they carry themselves? And subhanallah, as a mother now, as a with 6 children, I can see, like, every single one of them, from the same father, from the same mother, in the same household, eating the same food, and they're so different in their character. So we have to have very realistic expectations of our children. Sometimes we just want them to get on and, play well peacefully ever after, which may not happen, because I have a child who is very withdrawn and introverted, and I have a child who is very outgoing and extroverted, and they don't particularly get on well. So sometimes it's just like allowing them to have their own space, and also age and gender influence impacts the way they interact. I have two children who always get into trouble, and they have like 6, 7, 8 age gap between them. And again, I think it's a myth to believe that the wider the age gap, they can get on well. Just being aware of these things, what are the things that influence sibling interactions will help. And the one thing that I always recommend is stop making comparisons, because siblings, sibling jealousy, the root cause of it is making comparison. We always we always compare one child to another, like, why can't you be like your sister, or why can't you be like your brother? And I think each child craves to be seen in their own character. So number one, I would say stop making comparison. And number two, we have to make children feel understood, heard, seen when they get angry with each other. It should be accepted. So I often used to react, for example, if my older daughter gets angry with my toddler because she's just ripped her papers, I'd be like, this is nothing to be angry about, this is like, just get over it. No, if you say you have every right to be angry because this was something valuable for you. So if you acknowledge their feelings when they get angry with each other, that really helps with sibling conflict as well. And a lot of it also depends on self-control, like within mothers, right? So we have to teach by example. So often, like, we shout and saying like, oh, stop shouting. Yeah, I'm like, stop shouting each other, and I'm shouting at the top of my lungs, or like, be kind to each other, and sometimes like, be patient when your sister annoys you. And then my son turns around like, oh, well, you're not patient with me when you annoy me. So I think example is the best sermon, like setting by example, but mainly allowing them to express their feelings, acknowledge when they're angry or upset with one another. You have right to be upset. It's okay. I see you, I feel you, I understand you. So this will really help to diminish the sibling conflicts, because the more we try to repress these feelings, they try to be mean, like they're trying basically, like, they can't cope with this anger or sadness, or they're always trying to look outlook for their feelings that are not acknowledged. So they carry on being mean to each other. And I've seen it with my children. The moment I say, okay, you're angry and it's okay, it's khalas, she stops being mean. But if I say, like, there's nothing to be angry about, stop that this minute, and she carries on being mean. So these will help, I think, awareness and understanding of the emotions and what children want, and stop making comparisons. These things will help to establish discipline or like to manage the sibling jealousy, rivalry within the households, inshallah.
Inshallah. Now, Brother Azim, obviously, mashallah, with your years of experience of homeschooling your kids, how did you incorporate kind of the extracurricular activities within your homeschooling environment?
Extracurricular activities, again, I think this is something that varies from country to country. Alhamdulillah, in Pakistan, whether, as I was mentioning in the previous, when I was speaking, that, access to tutors, whether it's workshops, trainings, sessions, internships, a lot of these things are relatively easy to arrange or do. And so, to be honest, when we took our kids out in 2011 from school, at that time 5 of them were in school, we originally thought, how would we deal with this issue? But alhamdulillah, as time went on and the more we investigated, the more we looked around, we found that there are a plethora of options out there, whether it's sports, whether it's social skills, whether it's other things, organizations like Live Deen, Azan, which are unique to that we have here in Pakistan, and many things other than that. And then on top of that, whether you want to do an internship, you want to go and learn something new. So alhamdulillah, it's what you cannot, the main thing about home education is parents cannot assume that they're outsourcing their education and tarbiyah to a third party and just rest and relax and say, okay, now I've done my job, I've done what is required of me, and nothing's going to be asked of me. No, it's going to be asked anyway. So why not take that responsibility and do it in a manner of, in an excellent way, and with excellence. So that was our focus when we started, and alhamdulillah, we found that there's no shortage of extracurricular activities. But like I said, this is something that's unique from country to country. Maybe if I'm in Saudi, it may be a little different. Maybe I'm in Europe, it may be different. So, but in the context of Pakistan, alhamdulillah, whether it's football, whether it's taekwondo, whether it's whatever we wanted the kids to do, other art classes, physical fitness classes, everything is pretty much available out there. So alhamdulillah, it's just a matter of finding it and taking advantage of it.
Now, Sister Mona, obviously this is your kind of forte, this kind of the outdoor part. Now, can you give us some practical advice, some practical steps which the parents can take, inshallah? Because obviously when you're homeschooling, then the age brackets of the kids are going to be different. So having the same activity for all levels is going to be not conducive. So some practical advice, please.
Yeah, I think for some activities, you can involve the whole family. So Sister Irada and Abdullah, actually, I knew both of them from Riyadh, and they both came to some of the things I organized. So we would do family walks where we included everyone. And what I found is when you're doing home education and you try to have these activities where the whole family can be involved, you're having children interact with people of all age groups, and they actually gain really valuable skills. Because I feel like one of the aspects of schooling, like brick and mortar schooling, is that they get grouped with their same age cohorts, and they think that's normal. They think like, I can only be friends with other 11-year-olds, or I can only be friends with other 15-year-olds, or and what I found is with our children is they were interacting with people of all ages. So I would have my 10-year-old daughter, she would be friends with the 5-year-old, and vice versa. People were learning how to interact with all different types of age groups. They would make friends with the elders. So my daughter would become friends with the 50-something-year-old grandma who's coming along on the walks. So I actually find that you don't have to necessarily separate the age groups on some of these activities. Now, the ones that are more skill-based, where they have to be developmentally ready, so let's say art or even like martial arts or these type of things, then for some of them, yes, you're going to have to enroll them in what's suitable for their age level and their development. Like someone who's 5 is not going to be able to paint or draw like someone who's 10, 12, 13. That's just not going to work. But what you have is the older kids can give lessons to the younger ones, so you still can involve the whole family. And so something my daughter actually done, they're very artistic, mashallah. And I actually did temporarily put them in the Islamic school here, kind of half-heartedly, just because I had to work to earn money. So I did put them in the Islamic school, which is sort of a more homeschool-like Islamic school. It's like a one classroom type school. And so my daughter on her own, because she had been homeschooled and she was used to this, she actually started an art club where she was teaching the little kids how to draw like cupcakes and milkshakes and these type of things. And that's because of her experience as a homeschooler that actually gave her that kind of interpersonal skills where she didn't feel it was weird to be friends with people of other ages and to work with them. And so I really feel like in extracurriculars, it doesn't have to be limited to age at all. And it can be a way for your children to really learn how to interact with all different kinds of people of all age groups, and also give them a chance to be leaders and to actually give back and teach others. And I feel like we should focus on having them be a bit more active and in their agency and what they can actually do, and get more confident in their skills. As they get older, they can actually become teachers themselves. And this is where I feel like in the extracurricular realm, we really can make it like, yeah, like they can really develop themselves as people through the extracurriculars in this way. And even academically, you can have a 10-year-old teaching a 5-year-old how to read. Like there's nothing wrong with that, right? So I think as adults, we kind of take it all on ourselves. We have to do it. And another point with, let's say, what we had to do in Riyadh is because we didn't have a lot of, like, mashallah, Brother Azim in Pakistan sounds like he has a lot going on, like a lot of activities there. But in Riyadh, we actually found a lot of things lacking, especially for girls. So another thing I started there is I started teaching self-defense classes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so we would actually, my family, we'd be learning the moves on video, and then we'd go and the girls would come and then we would all practice together. And there wasn't really a space for that. So another advice I have for parents is like, don't be scared to start something yourself. You can learn a new skill at a basic level and then just practice together and together get better at something. You don't have to go to a master necessarily for every single type of activity you're doing. You know, as a community, you can just start something and do something so that everyone benefits, right? A lot of people are just waiting for someone else to start something. So mothers and fathers as well, you can start something. You can just start a walking group and then just look up things about nature and just start sharing that. So you don't have to be an expert to do that. You can just enjoy it together,
absolutely.
you know?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, very solid advice there. Now, Sister Abdullah, obviously designing a suitable curriculum is the biggest challenge when it comes to homeschooling. You know, there are various subsets. You know, some people say, okay, khalas, you take the British curriculum. If you're in the North American or you're following this kind of system of North America, you say, okay, khalas, you do the US curriculum. Then there is kind of private curriculums like Calvert available, etc., etc. Now, what is your advice? Because again, this, you know, mashallah, this is again is one of your you can say your babies, you know, the syllabus, which is. So how would you advise the parents to select a suitable curriculum? And what should be the rationale behind it?
In the beginning, you need to start with the easiest and the easiest curriculum that you can find. You know, because when I started, it was really a big variety, you know, and I didn't know which one I should use. So I started with the Egyptian curriculum for us, you know, because at least I know it. Then step by step, I started to discover each one of my child, the way he learns. And then I started to learn, search for the curriculum that fits him. Like when my older son was in the 7th grade, you know, he likes to search, he likes reading. So I got him Okmila. And Okmila, they contact, you know, like they put the curriculum, English and history in the same, like together. So what you are studying in history, you are taking stories in English in the same time study the history. So this was good for him. But for my other son, you know, he liked artistic. So we were looking for some curriculums that can attract his eyes. So step by step, you can discover each one of your child, what his way of learning. And this is when you start finding the suitable curriculum for him. By sitting in, from my experience, I was sitting in the homeschooling groups, you know, and I was following the comments for each mother who was advising about the curriculum. I was writing them in notes, and I start searching about this curriculum and pros and cons, you know, like, is it good? Would it fit which one of my children? And, you know, after a while, you will get understanding of the curriculums, and you will find the free and the you know, the expensive ones, and how you can get the best one for each one of your children. In the primary schools, you know, I find it is easy to find a lot of resources online and offline. You know, like you can find a lot of books, you can find a lot of videos, you can find a lot of websites. And it just, when you get to the secondary schools, this is when it's getting harder to find some resources, especially in Arabic, you know, because my children, you know, we have half Arabic and half English. So it's hard to find the good curriculum for them. But my advice for parents, don't make it hard for yourself. Don't buy curriculum for, you know, because this is what I noticed. They buy curriculum from grade 1 to grade 12. You know, how could you know that your child would still continue loving and be able to do this curriculum for all of these years? Every year, you can discover that this curriculum is not suitable for your son. It didn't do what you're expecting from this curriculum. So, you know, to take it easy, just start making a schedule about the curriculum, read reviews about it. You know, yes, we switched from the American curriculum to British curriculum. So now we have some knowledge about two systems. And because we are Arabs and we are different case from each one, you know. So we try to find the suitable one that can fit with our aim. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing homeschooling? And what is your aim from homeschooling? And what your child can learn from this curriculum? Based on that, you can choose the suitable curriculum for that.
Okay, mashallah, excellent. Sister Rhoda, now continuing on the curriculum kind of discussion, obviously some very, very important points from Sister Abdullah. This is a difficult decision to, obviously Sister Hala has mentioned that she's moved the kids from US to British. Now, I understand that you follow, for example, the key stage curriculum of the UK national curriculum in your case.
Yeah.
So do you, what is your rationale behind selecting a particular curriculum, or how do the parents how should they go about, selecting one?
I think there's no need to, a lot of parents think that they will have to design their own curriculums, which again is a myth, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel completely. And I don't think every homeschooling household will have to design their own curriculum. Basically curriculum refers to, should answer the three questions: what to teach, the list of all topics, concepts, values and beliefs, and the sequence, in what order these should be presented, and how to teach, methods and teaching styles. So for example, we follow the UK national curriculum because that's where we're from, and I always recommend parents to follow the curriculum of their own countries, because in the future, it just makes things easier if their children are going to college or university and try, settle in that country. So I get my topics in maths, English, science from the UK curriculum, and the sequence of instruction to teach these topics are also outlined in the UK national curriculum. And then we add Quran, Arabic language, Islamic studies, all of which we can find, many resources on the internet, alhamdulillah. Now we have many books available, and how to teach is really up to the parent. It could include reading and answering the questions orally or narration. We do a lot of making lab books or projects. So with the very little ones, cut and paste, listing, sorting, or ordering information. Any parent, again, can learn these teaching methods by trial and error. And for anyone, really, for me as well, as a qualified teacher, it's a learning curve. It's a work in progress, right? So going back to Abdullah, I would recommend not to invest in any boxed curriculums, because they are very expensive. They're very, very expensive. And you can easily, especially at primary level, you can easily find free resources. It's not rocket science, right? It's like the basic numeracy, literacy skills, and just follow the curriculum, UK national curriculum for reference, and do your own activity, throw in Quran or Arabic language, Islamic studies, and just really enjoy the process. And again, when it comes to secondary, that's when some of the maths concepts gets complicated. I really have difficulty, my eldest daughter 14, trying to explain some of the things, which is why this was the first year I subscribed her to an online tuition, in the UK, where she can independently do her own studies. So until I think age 12, any mum probably can teach their own children. But when it comes to secondary, maybe you can start searching more seriously, reading reviews about curriculums, or invest in boxed curriculums, or getting tutors, or maybe even online schools like Inter High, or other schools.
Well, Inter High, I have some reservations, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's very well said. Now, Sister Lara, coming to you, what would you actually advise with regards to incorporating the Islamic ethos? Because it seems that is your primary one of the primary aims of your project, obviously, is to also have the Islamic ethos and the kind of teachers you want to develop a marketplace for the teachers, right? For different languages. So how do parents go about developing the Islamic ethos in their kids?
Thank you. That's a very important question. First of all, if we just talk about curriculums, unfortunately, it doesn't exist in Islamic curriculum. So it's quite challenging for us, to parents, to find the right way to educate our kids. This is also one of the reasons we set up the project. We have experts, they're working on different learning models, different various topics to teach kids, and also the same that kids can see, that the parents can see the progress of it. To implement Islamic values it's our goal as a Muslim. We want to implement this. It's very important. And we want that kids learn Quran. I mean, every parent said, okay, I'll send my kids to madrasa. That's fine. But actually to understand also the Quran means to understand Islamic values. So this is very important. That's the reason why we said we just don't offer only Quran learning. It means as well to learn Arabic. And that we're fun. I mean, we just spoke about extracurriculums, and we have, for example, the idea to give, just like Hamza said, mashallah, chance to be a leader for kids. How we can do that? Kids could record their own videos. We started a small experiment with the daughter of my project partner, and mashallah, she's just 4 years old and she pronounced the Quran perfectly fine. And we have sent it over to some friends, and the feedback was amazing. The kids came back and said, I want to be like Latifa, that's the daughter's name. And they were in similar age, and they got encouraged to start learning Quran. This is very important to give fun. It's not a burden to start learning Quran. This is also a way to implement Islamic values. We want to be fair to our kids. We want that they understand why they read Quran. This is my last time my daughter asked me why I'm reading Quran, why I'm praying. I don't understand any word. So this is a really important step. And to teach Arabic, not every parent is able to do that. It's a second difficult, or maybe the difficult language on the world, mashallah, and it's the language of Allah. So we do believe this is very, very important, and that's why we started with the project. This is to enforce, to learn that Arabic and Quran belongs together, and then kids will understand why they all doing that. And then once they're able to read and understand Quran, they can question the things and coming back. And maybe one day they are able to understand more and can read the hadith of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Can you imagine that? And then one day, if they are advanced, they read Quran with love and passion because they understand what it is all about. And this is our goal.
May Allah, inshallah, give barakah in your goal, sister.
Ameen.
Now, I'm going to be asking the same question to Brother Azim and to Sister Hamza. Now, continuing from what I've asked Sister Lara, now we've got a kind of a situation in the Muslim countries specifically. I won't speak about the Arabic countries because in the Arab land, alhamdulillah, in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Middle East, etc., we have plenty of opportunities to learn Arabic and the Quran. So this question is specifically for non-Arabic Muslim countries and the countries in the West. And that's the reason I'm looking at both of you, because this is very important for both of those countries. Now, the question is that on one hand, we have these Islamic schools which are coming up. So I don't want to name any names in both the countries. I know plenty of them. I'm sure you also know plenty of them. Now, why would a parent, because at the end of the day, one of the important reasons why we want to homeschool our kids is because we want to give them these Islamic ethos, right? So why wouldn't one put the kids in an Islamic school versus, the homeschooling? Yani, how would you differentiate the two?
What was the question you had pointed out to me?
Yani, anyone can answer first. Brother Azim, you can answer first.
Okay, Bismillah. See, it really depends on why you're home educating in the first place. If you're doing it just because of the Islamic ethos, yes, you may be right. Although any school to become sustainable needs to bring in a certain number of students to fill up the seats. Sometimes to do that, you often have to compromise on the quality of the intake to be able to fill up those seats. And I've actually seen this because, like I said, in 2011, when we took our kids out, they were in a semi-Islamic school. So I could see this process actually happening. And even in the Islamic schools, other than that one that exist, again, no names being taken, but the quality of the intake of students is not perfect, is not ideal. Now, what do I mean by ideal? I mean, I'm responsible for the tarbiyah of my children. The school doesn't take that ownership. At the end of the day, it's my job to do. If at school they're surrounded in a particular classroom or with children who they're sort of forced to be with, nobody's guaranteeing that those children have that same tarbiyah that we want for our kids. So at the end of the day, even if it's the Islamic ethos aspect that I'm looking at, is that being covered in the school when, like I said, when I took my kids out of the school and everybody asked me, so what are you going to do about the socialization? I would tell them, well, the only socializing that the kids got in school was what is the latest movie and what is the latest phone. If that was the extent of the socializing, then, well, maybe I can just give it to them at home in a better manner. Probably better movie and a better phone. But the bottom line is that what is your intention? And so since our intention was to give them a lot of the schools, their only focus and their only barometer is grades. So that was not what myself and my wife, that was not what we were judging our children on. We wanted them to be good Muslim citizens in a Muslim society. Schools don't focus on that. Their focus is who got the 10 A's, who got the 12 A's, who got the 14 A's. I don't really care. Because if it's going to make you the same lousy citizen of this in society, then you're not really achieving anything. So are the Islamic schools dealing with those issues? I think they have some way to go. So like I said, if it meets your objective, fair enough. For me, it didn't meet my objective. In fact, when one of those schools started, they were like completely on my case, 6 kids in one shot. But we decided that no, this was not what we wanted, and so we refrained from sending.
Okay. Sister Hamza.
MashaAllah, Brother Azim actually really touched on pretty much very similar feeling and thought we have about the difference between homeschooling and putting the kids in school. So I actually had the opposite experience from Brother Azim, which is I've been homeschooling for 6-7 years since 2011, around the same time he took his kids out of school. I was starting to homeschool my 4-year-old. So now she's like 12, 13. When we came to Canada, we homeschooled for a year, and then we actually made the very difficult decision to put them in school. And we were so nervous, and we didn't know how it was going to turn out. And at that point, my homeschooling style was a bit more of the unschooling, which is kind of like very child-led, and it's more like project-based, and it's not a traditional kind of sit-down curriculum that we were doing. And they were going into a place that's very classical education-based, so it's going to be very intensive academically. MashaAllah, they went in and they were able to handle the academics perfectly fine. So I was like, ooh, I didn't do that bad of a job, the homeschooling part. The problem is that there is an assumption that because we're putting them in an Islamic school, that the leaders in the school, the teachers and everyone actually know how to teach children in an Islamic way. And unfortunately, we actually had an incident of discipline where one of my children was screamed at and yelled at and ridiculed for crying from one of the sisters that were working in the school. Now, we were just totally shocked because I'm actually a revert as well. Like Sister Lara is also a revert. So my husband and I were both reverts. We didn't grow up in an ethnic Muslim culture at all. We were both Western. I'm American and he's Canadian. And never, ever in our history of going to, I went to Catholic school, he went to public school, whatever. We never experienced that kind of treatment from anyone at school. And it was a shock to us that we put our child as an amana into the school with Muslim brothers and sisters running the school, and they actually were hurt. it was kind of like emotional abusive kind of behavior. And unfortunately, I think the sister wasn't aware that she was doing that because she was taking something cultural from her culture. That's how she was disciplined growing up, or she thought it was perfectly fine, and implementing that on other people's children. And a lot of parents saw that there was an issue with this, but were scared to say anything because they didn't want to offend the leaders in the community. These are people we consider kind of like scholars, ulema kind of people. So a lot of people are afraid to speak out. Me being a revert and having a very strong personality, I had no problem going straight to the imam, whoever, and just the principal, and being like, this is wrong. And for years and years, a lot of the children were suffering from this kind of treatment. Their faults were being pointed out in front of each other, in front of the whole school, in assembly. A lot of this was going on for years before we even joined this community without us knowing. We didn't know that's what it was like. And we only found out once our child experienced it. And we got some clues because they were like, someone was embarrassed at assembly today. And I was like, that doesn't seem right, And it wasn't until it happened to my child, I was like, wait a sec, this is a serious problem. And unfortunately, I spoke to other people who are familiar with Islamic schools across Canada, so even in the Ottawa area and others. And it seems to be a very common problem is that the style of discipline they have on the children is really unhealthy. And it's not coming from Islam at all. It's not coming from proper tarbiyah. It's coming from their kind of cultural and kind of like authoritative kind of attitude, like the children need to listen to us. We don't need to listen to them. And it's almost like, I don't know where it's coming from, but it's like children are meant to be seen, not heard. Like they can't talk back. They can't express themselves. We don't need to listen to them. We're right. They have to listen to us. There's this very strong attitude. We're the elders. They listen to us. And I'm like, you have to listen to the children. It can't be like that. And so we realized there was a huge contradiction between what they say on paper, their mission is, which is tarbiyah and character building, and how it actually happens in reality. So a lot of them are actually not familiar with positive discipline methods, or it could be because it's not their own children. They just, out of the sake of expediency, just treat all the kids this way. And so that was a big eye opener. And we actually had to really work with the administration and get them to agree to eliminate certain practices and to kind of promise not to do them ever again. Otherwise, kind of threatening without saying so that someone's going to end up reporting them for abuse, because it was technically abuse. And a lot of this is happening in Islamic schools. And even in Saudi Arabia, the bullying among the children, if, the Saudis and the non-Arabs.
Well, we
have so many stories. And these are supposed to be the most Islamic of the schools, where boys are being beat up and their arms are being broken and all sorts of things are happening. So as a parent, you're like, this isn't right. Like the so-called, they are Islamic schools. They teach Quran. They teach Islamic studies on, Fridays or whatever it is. It's not even every day, a lot of them. Yet the way they treat the children, the way the children teach each other are not from the Sunnah, are not from, Islamic traditions at all. So
no, inshallah, don't worry. I'll try to bring this. Yani, we've had once. By the way, any Islamic school headmasters watching this show today, this is not a kind of an Islamic school bashing show today.
No, it's not.
I just wanted to make this very clear. Number one.
But a lot of work has to be done in general if you're not homeschooling, a lot of work has to be done in the community to improve the level of education we're giving all the children. So people who aren't able to homeschool,
but sister, there is from their perspective, and this is what we discussed in the show. I think whosoever has not seen the show, please go to the Live Deen pages and the Islamic Youth Club International pages and see that show. We want to actually help even them make it's not an easy path, especially nowadays when, a lot of the parents are not even willing to pay that kind of tuition fee because of various factors, Now, how to make it work? They are at least trying to make a difference. So, I feel that yes, homeschooling obviously is an option. That is the reason we're discussing it today. But, this is not to suggest that Islamic schooling is not an option if not properly implemented. That is definitely also an option, Okay. Now, coming back to Abdullah, sister, an important question which we have, especially, like I said, living in the Arabic countries, in the Arab land, alhamdulillah, Arabic and Quran is not a major issue. My kids, alhamdulillah, all of them, alhamdulillah, we are non-Arabic speakers. All of them speak Arabic. Sister Rhoda's is the same case as well. I'm not really sure about Sister Hamza, maybe the same, and also Brother Azim. But Sister, what is your advice, especially to those parents who are listening, how to incorporate Arabic in the curriculum? Sister Abdullah.
Yes. Okay. Arabic is a very good language. Like it, I don't advise anyone to learn the grammar. I advise them to read for their kids. Reading a lot. Get a lot of Arabic books. Listen to a lot of Fusha. It really enrich their language and make them love the language. Because learning the grammar in the younger age make them hate the language, you know. So they need to learn the language by reading. Read to them. Get some books that audiobooks. Get someone to read for them. Read a lot for them. Make Arabic is a fun and a nice language for them, not just a grammar. Because once you start learning Nahu, it gets harder and harder, and sometimes when you reach the level of secondary or high school, they sometimes they hate Arabic because of the hard grammar. But they can love Arabic by just reading. Reading to them is really, this is my advice. Read for them. And once you catch them writing, get them to write Arabic, simple words and calligraphy. Calligraphy can be a very good introduction to Arabic. Beautiful. Last year we had a workshop with calligraphy. He came to our house and he gave us a workshop about Diwani, Khat Diwani. You know, it was a good introduction for them to see the beautiful of Arabic. And when you take a help from someone who loved Arabic, you know, he loved Arabic and, he tried to transfer his love of Arabic to them. So poetry is a good way for Arabic too. Get some Arabic books that has simple poets, and read it to them. We have a lot of resources for Arabic, but the issue is still online. You can't get this much Arabic books. So maybe because of the coronavirus and because of the lockdown of the schools, some Arab countries they started to do the online system. They transferred their school to be online. So like Saudi Arabia, they have the Ain school. This is a very good school website that you can take the chance of it. It's free. You know, they have everything about Arabic, all the levels that you need. So try to go to these websites and take the chance of it.
Can you repeat the website again, sister, for the audience, please?
Yes, the website.
Yes, please.
The website for Saudi Arabia it's called Ain. EIN.
EIN. Okay. AIM. Okay. AIM.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
It's the Saudi websites for curriculums. It's really very good, and they have all the levels for Arabic.
No. So if someone can please search the website and post the link in the comments. Now, we'll be starting, inshallah, the Q&A for the audience. Alhamdulillah, we've got a fairly large audience today. So we'll be starting the Q&A. So I haven't seen the questions so far. So whatever questions you have from the panelists, please write them down. Inshallah, we'll just be starting the Q&A pretty shortly. But before I do that, now, Sister Iroda, one of the important considerations for the parents is entry into universities. It's all well done, primary, middle, secondary, etc. But obviously, in most of the countries, homeschooling is not recognized.
Yeah.
So what is the pathway now to higher education? What is the pathway to college education in those instances?
I think every parent will have to research within their own localities. Like I know, because homeschooling is legal in the UK, so and children don't necessarily need to obtain formal qualifications at primary, secondary school, and they can easily. The only requirement to be able to go to university is GCSEs and A levels, which all students can sit independently. So when children are around 13, 14, you can encourage them, motivate them to do like GCSE exams, and they are mainly internationally acceptable. These GCSE and A-level qualifications are internationally acceptable. So like I can get my children to do GCSEs here in Jeddah. I can independently register them with British Council to sit maybe 3-4 subjects. And with these qualifications, they can probably go to university in Malaysia or anywhere really. So the parents will have to, my children are still young, by the way, but I know from other parents that I have worked with, and I have, consulted, helped them to choose career path or apply and go to university. And it's possible. All homeschooled children, I know many cases where children were homeschooled throughout the Middle East, and they were successfully able to obtain formal GCSE or A-level qualifications, and they were able to go to university in Pakistan or in Malaysia. And a lot of people choose not to send their children in the UK, mainly because it's a non-Muslim Western country and they may not have extended family, or just generally there are a lot of concerns also regarding tuition fees, right? So many people don't agree. So we usually do a lot of research on tuition fees, living expenses, budgeting, traveling, all this like living costs, and taking all of that into consideration, you can choose either where you are, or if you want to send them overseas. It requires a lot of research, basically. So it doesn't mean that if children are homeschooled, alas, they're going to stay, end up being housewives or stay-at-home boys for the rest. No, it's that there are actually a lot of options out there, even online universities, online colleges, and a lot of universities now have moved on to e-learning platforms, so they offer distance learning options. So there are so many options, but parents will have to research, read reviews, talk to maybe education consultants who can help them narrow down their career path, or get like entry requirements to certain universities. So it's possible. The options are many, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. Now, Sister Muna, are you aware of any kind of latest research for the university entrance and retention for the homeschoolers specifically? And are you aware of kind of any other areas of entrepreneurship versus working for someone else, kind of if the person is coming from a homeschool background? What are the retention rates there?
Yeah, so surprisingly, a lot of the most successful people in the world did not finish university, by the way. So oftentimes we think that's the only answer to have successful children. And percentage-wise, especially if you look at countries like America and Canada, which, that's where I'm based in North America here, only like 30% of the people actually go to post-secondary education. So actually go to college and university. So we, especially I think in the Asian and Middle Eastern community, we put a very high status and very high priority on our kids having to go to college and university. But there's actually so many more options out there that they could do that doesn't necessarily require a bachelor's, for example, or higher. Now, I do have a master's, so I'm not speaking for myself. Yep. Like for me, going through school is what helped make me successful. But for the children, we can kind of first of all, have a bit more open mind of what their options could be besides college and university. For some people, they might want to go straight into a vocational option, which is, for example, becoming an electrician or plumber in the Middle East sounds terrible, but you can actually make a lot of money in the UK and in America. Like these are actually jobs, or a mechanic or something, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of have to open our mind a bit that all the roles that they could play in society are all respectable, and not limit them to just being like an engineer or a doctor, which I feel like most people want their kids to be an engineer or a doctor. Yeah. And then you mentioned kind of the entrepreneurship. And increasingly now we're seeing, people are leaving high school from age 16 or so because they thought of some amazing idea and they end up millionaires. Not saying that's any of our children necessarily going to be that way, but that it is potentially, if your goal is just to be successful and make money, there's other ways of doing that besides school. Now, if it's because their pathway requires schooling and requires university, then when you look, internationally, I'm not sure about homeschooling internationally because I don't know the statistics in a lot of these other countries. I feel like homeschooling is technically not legal in many countries. Schooling has become compulsory. And if you look into the history of that, why is schooling compulsory? A lot of it has to do with government control over the people, wanting to track people, wanting to control who gets to be what. If you look at the Asian countries, there's something called manpower planning. So, I don't know if people know, but so my background is actually in international education policy. So what I actually studied and researched for my master's are educational systems all around the world and how they work and why they've become the way they are. And so a lot of the compulsory education is actually based on governmental control on how they can track people into different, almost like socioeconomic classes. A limited number of people, for example, in Asia can become doctors. A limited number can go into these different roles, right? So it's very, very controlled. So in that kind of environment, if that's where you're much more limited in what you can do as a homeschooler because your system of education to get these jobs later on, you have to go through that system. Now in the West is a lot more open. So in America and Canada, where homeschooling is legal, and UK is kind of in the middle there, between a highly controlled and a more relaxed. So in America is way more relaxed. And the homeschooling success when they enter the university pathway is very high. They actually score higher on standardized tests, so like SATs, than their peers. So they're like at the 80th percentile, for example. They tend to score better and they tend to do better and be more successful when they enter university to actually complete the program. So we know that homeschoolers aren't missing out when they homeschool. They're actually doing better. And one of the issues like socialization was mentioned a couple of times. They actually tend to be better able to socialize in the real world because they're not put in that kind of artificial peer-based environment where they care. Girls they hit that age 12, 13. And then when they go to school, most of it is just peer pressure to fit in, to look the right way, to be in the cliques. Exactly. And so they end up having their whole teenage years where they're learning to be a woman is so very much based on just these superficial things. And it's happening to our Muslim girls as well. We're not immune to that, even if they wear hijab, right? Absolutely. So it's kind of like you're thinking, okay, if you want them to be a successful person in real life, homeschooling actually gives them more of a real life experience, in my opinion. Because homeschooling doesn't necessarily mean being at home. You're taking them out to experience real life as a person, not as a grade. The first thing people ask, what grade are you in? Like when they ask your kids and they're like, I don't know. I'm just me. I don't have a grade. Because they're just treated as a whole person, not based on their peer group. So there's a huge difference there. Yeah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Now, Brother Azim, kind of the last question before I come to the audience Q&A. In your experience, what is the cost-benefit analysis? Well, I won't say cost-benefit, but cost-to-cost comparison for regular school versus homeschooling. Where would you put? Obviously, there's a very large market for the regular schools, but on average, I'm just asking.
To be honest, at least if I take it just in the Pakistan context, yes, I don't have that very large outlay of fees that go every month or every 3 months, and you need to pay those fees for the schools. My expenses are more spaced out across multiple tutors, multiple football clubs, multiple karate clubs, social clubs, so on and so forth. But Brother Nokesh, that at the end of the day, it's a matter of what I want to achieve with my children. I know, in fact, there's another brother here who's also homeschooling, and he started it because I convinced him. But it was not my convincing. He actually made an Excel sheet and did an ROI calculation of sending to school versus homeschooling. And he actually found that the ROI on homeschooling is actually better. So, but that may not be the case. Maybe you will go for a football club that is expensive, or you will go for the OA level option where the cost of the papers is high because it's in pounds and we're in rupees. But if you go for the local system, the cost will be significantly lower. So it really varies. It's, as my wife always says, don't just assume that someone is homeschooling because it's a cheaper option and you can't afford the schools. That's not necessarily always the case. You may, and like us, alhamdulillah, I can afford it. But the point is that I'm doing it because I just feel it's a better option for my children. And in respect to the question regarding the university, as Sister Rhoda said, it's very much local. And in Pakistan, because you can do the private government system privately, you can do the British system O&A level privately. So, but you have to have some sort of qualification for the university to say, okay, I have a measurement of you so that I can bring you into my university. So alhamdulillah, at least with my kids, they're doing the O-level, A-level system. The number 2 is already in Canada. Number 1 is doing his ACCA in Pakistan. Number 3 and number 4 are working on their O-level. So alhamdulillah, the options are there. And for someone to feel, well, how is my kid going to get into university? You don't need to worry about that. Inshallah, they will get into university.
Inshallah. Okay, Jazakallah khair. That, I think, brings to the close kind of the panel questions which I've been asking, although, you know, we have not been able to cover whatever we wanted to cover. That was something which was expected. Now, the first question now is to Sister Aroda. Sister, you should be able to see the question on the screen now.
Okay.
So, how to improve kids' focus when they get distracted a lot, short attention span, especially how homeschooling can help to improve that.
Okay, so how to improve? I think there are a number of things that affect children's attention span. Good, but my number one advice is always have a schedule and routine. I think it's the single most important thing in if you set out to homeschool. Good bedtime routine is really helpful, and also diet, right, to control the attention span, like pay attention to what they're eating, and we are what we eat. Likewise, if children, we feed them a lot of junk and sugar, they obviously it will affect their attention span. Generally speaking, it's self-discipline. Like, we all need number 1, motivation and to study. Number 2, discipline, right? So likewise, children need inspiration, motivation, and then discipline. So we have to inspire them, we have to motivate, encourage them, but also what keeps them at their studies is discipline. There should be some sort of routine schedule in place where everybody contributes towards, like, running household and have a set time to get on with their studies, and have like rewards and consequence system. And a lot of the time we don't communicate clearly what is expected of our children. And I know from experience that children thrive on routine. So we need to have very clear, age-appropriate expectations of our children, number 1. Number 2, we have to communicate this very, very clearly, right? I want you to do X, Y, and that. And once that children thrive on routine, once they know what is expected of them, they will follow through. They will follow through. We should allow room to fail, but always have some sort of consequence, like rewards and consequence system. Have daily charts, to-do lists. We make daily to-do goals, and this is the area I heavily invest. I get all my children planners, diaries, journals, so they can jot down their own like daily schedules and make notes, and so they get used to it. That they know what's expected of them. And then you can other interventions like sleep intervention, early bedtime routine, or diet intervention. These will help to with their attention and focus, inshallah.
Inshallah. Yes, Sister Mona.
Can I jump in real quick? I just want to add a couple of points. That you have to also think about the age of your child. A younger age child is not as able to sit for a long period of time, and you have to be realistic. The other is that sitting has now become something that we do too much of in general at all ages, and that a lot of research actually shows some children actually work better when they're moving around. So it's actually not necessarily like they can actually focus better when they're moving. So we kind of have this traditional notion that studying has to look like someone sitting at a desk quietly, not moving, not fidgeting with a book, and they have to be able to do that for like a whole hour or something. But if you break down lessons into shorter chunks, periods of time, giving them breaks to wiggle and get around, or even invest in like an exercise ball for them to sit on, or moving their workstation where they actually sit down to do work into kind of like either standing or sitting on the floor, kind of giving them different options. Like like when you educate at home, it doesn't have to look like a school with desks and everyone sitting in a chair.
Absolutely,
You can be a little more creative, so your children can kind of still accommodate their need to move while they're studying.
No, Jazakallah khair, very, very important advice. In fact, very important for one of my youngest kids. In fact, myself, he's obviously, Sister Rhoda knows him very well. He can't sit still. So, and yeah, that's very important to recognize that. Sister from Abdullah, this is the question for you, please. If the child isn't interested in learning the basic concepts, like, for example, adding in maths or reading and writing, etc., and they are reaching the age of 7, then what would you suggest?
In homeschooling, we have we don't follow like the school. Like in the school, he must know all of this in 1 year. But in homeschooling, we are following the child and how he likes and what his capabilities more than what he should know. So if he is not able till grade 7, and he's normal child, maybe he is talented in something different. Like reading, like writing, like doing crafts, like arts, but he's still not ready for math, so you need to follow him. This is what the big difference between school and homeschooling or home education. You are following the child, you're following his passion. If he's, maybe something different, maybe the way he learns is not the suitable way for him. Maybe you're teaching him 1 + 1 = 2. This is, a direct way. Maybe the child doesn't like that. Maybe by making different, like making games, trying different ways to give him the concept. It's not that like school, he must follow that. Just build the curriculum around the child, fix the environment, and the flower will be beautiful. So the child is like a flower. Look around, look in the environment, help him to discover it. And not just force him to do this and compare him to others. Even his brothers, even his friends. No, he is different. He's unique. Each child is unique, and you need to discover his beauty, and his learning way, So take it easy as a parent, and think about the other thing that he's clever in, and think about the best way to teach him these concepts.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. Now, Sister Laura, this is a question for you.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, yes. Yes, okay. How to interest a child to be able to become a hafiz of Quran? Yes, is it right? Yes, right. Yes, as I mentioned before, there are different ways and alternative learning ways to do so. As we mentioned before, one of the goals of My Moon is also to encourage to become kids to give kids the chance also to become a leader. And if they see other kids, as I mentioned before, we have the opportunity that kids can upload their own videos where they show how they memorized already Quran. When this is about the competitive spirit we haven't talked about today, this is a very important point we shouldn't miss and underrate, because if kids see kids or admire other adults, getting a role model, encourage the kids itself to memorize Quran, get the love of learning Quran. If I see, mashallah, you build a relationship. We spoke in the very beginning about this. If you build a relationship to a child, I mean, it's not all of us, our parents, we are not hafiz. and it's amazing if they are. So that's the reason you want your kids want to be a Hafiz. Find a Hafiz teacher, perfect fit for your child, who maybe is maybe in a similar age, could be, or maybe a bit older, or a person who the kid can build a nice relationship, a trustworthy relationship. He will look up to the person and admire the person and wants to be like the person. And with understanding why he wants to memorize Quran, first of all, this is the very basic. They have to understand why I want to do that. What's the reason behind it? And then to have someone, even if it's the parents or somebody from outside, to implement that, to have somebody as a role model to understand how important it is to learn Quran, to feel the love, and then it will be easily. The relationship, as we mentioned before, subhanAllah, is the key point.
Jazakallah khair, sister. Brother Azim, this question is for you, please.
Okay. Whenever anybody asks me about time management, and they feel that, you know, now that the kids are at home all day long, they probably don't do anything anymore. I remind them that as Muslims, we are automatically tuned into time management. You have to get up for Fajr, you have to take a break for Dhuhr, you have to, you know, all the 5 Salah have to be done at a particular time. You have other responsibilities during the day, you know, bathing on Friday, things like that. So automatically there is some level of discipline that is part of your routine, that is part of your life all the time. It's not something. I remember when I was doing my MBA in Canada, I had a Jewish professor who actually praised Muslims because of this one factor. He said, you know, no matter how busy you are, you're still going to stand up, go on the side somewhere and make your prayers and make your ablution and whatever it takes. So automatically there is some discipline that is there. And keep in mind, this is not something that just happens because of school. It's something that a family or a home needs to have anyway. So again, I often like to say that, so that I can make parents realize that don't think that just because if you're sending your kids to school that the discipline will automatically come with it. It's something that we have to develop as parents at home. And once it's developed, it's just a matter of refining it. Now, having said that, yes, when you're home educating, you do have the flexibility, you know, relatives visiting from North America, fine, we'll put the work on the side for a week. Once they're gone, we'll do it. We'll start up again. You don't have that flexibility when you're in school. You know, you have a particular structure that you have to follow. And in home education, like I said, the objective, at least for us, was not necessarily to get children with 10 A's, but rather to get children who are, you know, productive Muslim members of society. So then you're able to focus on whatever is most important for you. And the time management comes in with the overall disciplining of, and again, it applies to the parents just as much as to the children. If we're not disciplined, if we don't take time out for doing things that are important and part of our vision, then obviously we can't expect our children to be doing it either.
Can I just chime in? Sorry, I just want to answer this question from mother's perspective. You know, like you said, Brother Azim has pointed out, mashallah, yes, we have to focus on 5 daily salah and, you know, make sure that everything revolves around salah. But time management actually comes from planning, right? A lot of the time just because we decided to homeschool, like we don't actually take the time out to plan effectively. And, you know, if you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail, right? So we all need to set like clear goals. And especially for women, I think a lot of time is wasted overthinking, because I remember in the early days of my homeschooling, you know, it should look like picture perfect in my head, right? Unless, you know, everybody is getting on with their books and workbooks and, you know, quietly, there's no baby wailing and there's no toddler moaning and, you know, there's no interruptions and no distractions. So it must happen like this. Otherwise, like, forget it. It's not happening. No, we have to, you know, like get out of the story in your head, right? Because we want to be perfect. We aim to be perfect, and because of this perfectionist attitude, we actually waste a lot of time overthinking, because we're thinking about the outcome. So what I suggest to, or I recommend, is try to utilize small pockets of time. So it doesn't have to be, learning doesn't have to be limited to table and chair, right? It could be in the kitchen or in the living room, or anywhere really. Try to utilize small pockets of time. And a lot of the time also stress causes procrastination. A lot of women get stressed about academics. I'm not able to teach, I'm not qualified, I don't know what to teach, I don't know how to teach. But if we have very clear goals of what to focus, and like what we really want to achieve by the end of this month, and then plan out baby steps how we want to achieve those goals, right? So putting it down in writing is very, very important. So unless you plan it, it may or may not happen, right? But once you write it down, then planning is important, but we know that, to following through, you become more accountable and committed to the task.
Yeah, very, very well said. Jazakallah khair. Sister Mona, this is a question for you. We have kind of answered this question, but a lot of times people think that when we are speaking about homeschooling or homeschooled kids, then we're just saying we're not going to be relying on anything else. So I just want to make sure that that is not the notion there. So if you can elaborate on this, please.
Okay, I almost didn't unmute myself there. So the question is, can we not create a balance between homeschooling and online Islamic schooling? Why totally rely on homeschooling alone? So I don't think anyone who homeschools technically relies on homeschooling alone. Like, I feel like all mothers at some point, and fathers as well, we reach out to a community where we have resources and support from our friends and from people who are more experienced than us. And if, for example, me being a revert, my Arabic isn't the strongest. My Quran, alhamdulillah, I did study, but I'm going to reach a point where I wouldn't be able to teach my children anymore. I wouldn't be able to check their tajweed and their makharij just because I'm limited in that. So you will definitely need help. Whether it should be online Islamic school is the question, because what I found with my children is that the older age kids are able to navigate the online education quite well and benefit from it. But my daughter, who's like 7, 8, like the younger age kids, I feel like the online just did not work for her at all. Like, she hated it being online, even though it's with a teacher she knew from in person. Even doing Quran and Arabic, she just really prefers in person with somebody. And so I would probably have to sit down with her separately and review and do everything anyway, just because the online wasn't working for her. For my older girls, it was okay. And this is what, goes back to what other people are saying. Each child's different. Not everyone can adapt to an online curriculum very well, no matter if it's Islamic or any other subject. Not everyone can learn online. Even like my husband, he hates learning online. He doesn't like it. He prefers in person because he actually pays attention better and learns better when the person's in front of him, with him. And so children are like that as well. So you really have to gauge your children differently. Right now, it's very hard because of coronavirus. We're limited in how much in-person things we can do.
Correct.
But, you have to do your best for each child, what suits them, inshallah.
Inshallah. Sister Rhoda, this is a question for you, and Sister Mawdullah, if you can also, although you have answered this question, but I would like to get this answer because this is a question for kind of the non-native speakers of Arabic. This is a real problem. Maybe Brother Azim, if you want to also participate in this question, or Sister Laura, anyone can comment on this one, because this is specifically for those parents who cannot speak Arabic.
I think, Abdullah, if you can comment on how you can incorporate English as an additional language within your, homeschool routine, and then I think the rest of us can touch base on how we can incorporate Arabic as an additional language, inshallah. Abdullah?
For us, we just yes, I'm listening. For us, English, we start in the younger age. We start with Anashid, and time for Starfall. It's a website, some basic stories, but in the house we speak Arabic only. No other language. because some families they speak other language in the same house to make the child listen to it. But for us, we just speak Arabic in the house and we learn English, so they wouldn't make conflict. Then when they get older, they take it as a subject. You need two in the house, to speak, one to speak Arabic, and someone to be the source for Arabic and someone to be the source for English, not the same one to give all the languages, because this will make a conflict for the child, especially in the younger age, like younger than 6 years old. You need to separate the time for each language, because this is the time for him to get the language. After that, by reading, by listening to stories and watching movies, then after that, it's just like a curriculum. You follow the curriculum. Hope that would help.
Yeah.
I think for us as non-Arabic speaker, I have taught my children Arabic myself using Medina Arabic book when we were still in the UK, and Gateway to Arabic book. And again, like from experience, my own Arabic is very, very limited, but I was able to teach my children to some extent before moving to Saudi Arabia. So we would just learn 10 new words every day. We would learn like very basic grammar using Medina Arabic book and Gateway to Arabic, both level 1 books. And, like I said, my Arabic is very limited, and I'm a living proof that you don't need to know something to be able to teach at primary school. So alhamdulillah, but once
I agree with you.
Yeah, but once we came here, then we outsourced it. My children actually learn to Arabic and Quran elsewhere, and my recommendation would be focus on Quran more rather than just the Arabic language. Like, teach them Arabic alphabet and teach them like Nurani Qaida to start with, and then move on to Juz Amma, so they can actually read Quran in the Arabic language before learning the Arabic as a language. And once they are able to read Quran, then we can focus on like, okay, learn 10 new vocabulary every day. And I used to get them do lots of copy work. So they used to copy maybe, 2-3 lines in Arabic. And then they started reading like small stories in Arabic. And then, alhamdulillah, by the time we moved here and they went to Quran school where they learn Arabic and Quran, they were able to fit in.
Okay. Anyone else wants to contribute here?
Yes, please. This is a very important point. We always prioritize still English. Arabic is spoken in many languages. To just prioritize Arabic, obviously, I'm speaking a bit Arabic. Alhamdulillah, I learned it, but it's not to the extent that I could understand the whole Quran and teach them to my kids. So this is that in that term, we need experts from outside. We need somebody who teach them. And this is also a way also to have maybe group courses with kids in the similar age. They're not English speaking, but they will be Arabic speaking. This would be the aim, that the kids will be Arabic speaking, and then finally they're becoming like, we used to do this pen pal, yes? And then Arabic online pen pal. This is a new vision we have. Arabic as a really important language. It is a huge language and many people speaking it. It will be an advanced for them academically to learn Arabic. And English, we all know Arabic is a challenging language. But if we tell the kids from the very beginning, oh, it's hard. Yes, it is hard. The grammar is hard. But if we start from the very beginning and give them the right input, the right people, they will learn the love to learn a language, and it will come naturally to learn it, especially if they want to have friends. and communicate with them all over the world than in Arabic. That's what I see. And as well in the UK, that's what I know, you are able to do your GCSE in Arabic as well. So this is very important in that case. We need people from outside. We try to implement it. As Abdullah said, we do them, maybe we start with when they're smaller with nasheed, listen to Quran, just to get the hearing. And then kids are they sponges. They're learning so quick. But you as a parent, you have to prioritize what is more important. And Arabic is also an academic side. We shouldn't underrate this. It's, mashallah, a religious duty, and it also can be more implemented as an academic part as well.
Brother Azim, this is a question for you.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it out there, sort of an alternative view of this, just for people who maybe have children who've grown, who maybe didn't learn Arabic as much as you would have liked, perhaps, is to not feel guilty and not feel like it's too late. Because I think, as parents, we put so much pressure on, especially if we're religious, we want to raise our children to like memorize Quran, know Arabic. Not all kids are disposed towards, memorizing the whole Quran. That's something all of us want our kids to do, but you could try, you could push them, and some of them just can't, they won't. It's just not, maybe it's just not in their qadr, it's just not going to happen. And to not feel guilty and beat yourself up and feel like you failed because your kids aren't fluent in Arabic. Like I lived in the Middle East for so long and my kids picked up some, and I was hoping they would become fluent, but they weren't. And I did feel very guilty for a long time. And I realized like, when the time is right and they're older and they want to learn, they will learn. Yeah, like as a convert, in our I was already grown up, and because I wanted to, I learned. So I'm like, it's never too late. So don't think like if you missed that window before they're 10, now it's too late. No, like inshallah, they can always try later.
Brother Azim, just a quick one, and before you answer this, Brother Azim, if I may request all the panelists, if you can please WhatsApp me your the links which you are mentioning, for example, any kind of Arabic resource links, homeschooling links which you've come across, so that what I can do is I can paste them, inshallah, for all the various live streams which are going on, and then people will be able to take benefit, because I'm receiving a number of questions which I'm not showing on screen, asking for links to resources, Arabic, English resources, etc. So whosoever can please send me the links and I can start to post them. Yes, Brother Azim.
Okay. When we first took our kids out, one of the first things that we wanted to consider was, hifz. And just to add to what Sister Hamza just said, we realized that doing hifz is great. The reward is immense, and as parents, it's immense for us as well as for the child. But we found it is not something that is required of us, in the sense that what do we want? What will Allah expect us to have done with our children? And that is to have made them good Muslims and productive members of a Muslim of society. So my eldest son, mashallah, he has done his hifz, but he did it because he wanted to do it. We found an institute which was being run by a friend. I asked him if I could send my son for a week just to try it out. He said, sure. I sent him. My son liked it, but we were categorical in telling him, his name is Abdullah, that look, Abdullah, you're doing this because you want to do it, not because we are telling you to do it. Because there will be times where you will really be stressed and you will really be pressured. Don't turn around and say, this is your fault. It's not our fault. It's a choice that you are making as an individual. And alhamdulillah, he made the choice. He learned a lot from it. Even, alhamdulillah, other than the hifz, just the general experience of going in that institution and learning with Quran and teachers who were from a very different background. But alhamdulillah, it was something that he benefited from. My second son went as well. He did part of the Quran, but as Sister Mamda said, it wasn't working for him. He wasn't able to move forward, so he moved on and did something else. So,
and Brother Azim, can you also please answer this one once you've answered the
sure.
one?
And in response to the question regarding the books, Darus Salam usually has very good books for Arabic resources, and the little time that I spent learning Arabic, as Sister, I believe, one of the sisters mentioned. The Medina series of textbooks for learning Arabic are very good and very easy to understand. In fact, they're made for non-Arabic speakers to use. So generally, if you can get your hands on those, otherwise locally, Dar es Salaam generally has some good material that you can use to learn Arabic. In response to that, I would like to know the father's role in homeschooling in particular. Can you play your part in home education? And could you please give a couple of examples? As I like to stress to whoever asks me, home education is not a one-parent job. Allah is going to ask both of us how we raised our children. Obviously, the father has a slightly more responsibility, but that doesn't mean the mother is absolved of it. Obviously, they're her kids too. The father, if let's assume, as in most cases, the mother is doing most of the daily teaching and organizing of things, it's the father that brings in that external touch, whether it's taking the kids when they go to the mechanic to fix the car, taking the kids if you're attending a board meeting for your truck that you run, taking the kids when you're going to meet with a friend. And something that someone had mentioned earlier, our classrooms, as they said earlier, are artificially made. A group of 30 kids, 25 kids, 20 kids of the same age group are stuffed together with the assumption that they will learn from each other. The last thing that they do is learn from each other. When my kids were growing up, I got married a little earlier than most of my friends. Most of my friends would be spending late nights at my house, hanging out, drinking tea, while my young children were sitting there. Alhamdulillah, I wasn't going to indulge in any foul language, any wrong actions. Therefore, I had no problem in keeping my kids with me. But those friends of mine now tell me that your children are, mashallah, much more mature for their age. And that is purely because they grew up seeing adults around them and listening to them. So I don't remember having
I can vouch for that, yeah.
Where I don't remember teaching my kids that, Abdullah, you shouldn't say this at this time, or Qasim, you shouldn't do this at this time. It seems that they picked it up on their own. And as long as you have a good community or good people around you, you will pick up the right things. Similarly, myself and my group of friends, we used to have basically a class in the summer for during the school year for teenage boys on Saturdays. And we learned from these boys, we actually called some of them, some of the older ones, some of the younger ones, and we actually learned that the younger ones actually learned more from the older ones than they did from each other. And they actually wanted to be in the class with the older ones, despite the fact that the older ones often tried to shoo them away, that, look, we don't want you near us. But those young ones actually sort of, like a magnet,
they wanted to mingle with them, yeah.
Yes, exactly, because they could learn more from it. So where does the father's role come in? All of this is the father's role, because the father is the one who's going to take the kids out. The father is the one who's going to get them involved with clubs and involved with other people. The father is the one. I remember when my sons wanted to get a bicycle, and my wife was like, well, what if he got a bicycle. And she was concerned, well, what if he rides too far? What if he falls down? What if he gets hurt? And she looks at me and I'm like, so how is he going to learn? Let him go. And he went, and alhamdulillah, he came back in one piece. So she actually tells me now that it was because you were willing to take that risk. I would have probably not done that. So that's where the father comes into the picture, taking those risks that maybe the mother is not willing to take. But
some fathers
I must be a father then. Yeah, I was like, actually, I feel like it's reversed in my family.
Oh, so, okay.
The mom doing everything.
Okay, yes, Sister Rhoda, can you please take this?
How to deal with other children around your own children who go to the public school, how to save them from their thoughts and actions. I think maybe the sister is referring to like family pressure. So if your children are being homeschooled and they may have cousins or neighbors who go to school, and how do you I'm not quite sure. What was the question again? How to save them from their thoughts and actions.
Yeah, I could chime in if because I understand the question.
Okay.
So there's this sort of assumption that kids who go to public schools are being exposed to like bad behavior, maybe social media, maybe things that kids who are homeschooled or maybe even possibly go to some Islamic schools are kind of in a bubble. Like we don't our kids aren't exposed to, let's say, curse words and bad media and all this stuff. So if your child is sort of in this bubble of maybe you can say good suhbah, so like a good company, and they're not exposed to this sort of negative environment. And then they have to interact with children who go to public school who maybe learn like, I'm just giving very specific examples, but like, let's say curse words, bad language, bad behavior, disrespectful behavior to adults, this kind of thing. Then how do you protect your children, right?
I think it's, you know, that the pressure is everywhere, right? The minute you leave your house, you are exposed to external influences, all of which will impact your child in one way or the other. You know, it's not necessarily sometimes like in the UK, maybe billboard adverts or just, you know, seeing people's behavior at the bus stations or train stations. I think it's, you can't choose to be locked up inside forever. Yani children will be exposed to some thoughts or some behaviors or like physical things which are not Islamic, and it is the parents' job to intervene in these situations and point out, you know, the wrong. Ultimately, this is the aim of our education, isn't it? Like to help our children to be able to differentiate the right from wrong and to choose it for themselves, or to differentiate truth from falsehood and choose it themselves. And it all boils down to your relationship with your child. You know, it's very, very important to have an open communication with your child. Like my son was riding a bike the other day, and something happened. You know, a stranger was talking to him, and he was able to come home to me and say that, oh, this person said such and such to me. And I was very glad that he told me this incident, and so I could tell him, you know, the next time if they call you or if they tell you, don't go, just like, you know, walk away. And we had a very open communication. But a lot of the time children may be scared to
they don't
they
don't
don't
open up.
yeah, even my son was very scared, like, oh, is it okay if I tell you my secret and this thing happened? And it was something inappropriate, very inappropriate. And we live in Saudi Arabia, right? So you can't expect, like, we live in near Mecca, it doesn't happen. No, it happens everywhere, right? It happens everywhere, and the pressure is out there. And have open communication, and it boils down to your relationship with your child. Like once someone asked Sheikh Salman Al Oda, you know, how can I get my children love Salah? And his answer was, have them love you first. Because, like, you know, the essence of tarbiyah is relationship. It's based upon your relationship with your child. So if you have loving and connecting relationship, and you can point that out, and children can come to you to seek advice or counseling when needed, and inshallah you can always help them to choose the right thing for themselves.
Just last two questions.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to add something, which is that as parents, we always feel that fear of like exposing our children to the bad. But the thing is that we can't always protect them from that, but we can show them that there's a good, like, even though Allah put that in your life, maybe you met some, you know, bad friends or whatever, but our job as Muslims is to be an example. And I give, you know, my example as being a non-Muslim who ended up embracing Islam because Muslims made friends with me, even though perhaps technically I was a bad influence, and maybe I talked about bad things, and maybe I was telling them stuff they didn't want to hear, but they had so much sabr with me. And this is being like a young adult. They actually had patience. They listened to me. They treated me well. They set a good example. And eventually that brought me to Islam. So when you realize, especially for people like, you know, the Muslims we're living in the West, one of the intentions we have here, even to tell our children, is we have to be very intentional that we're living in a non-Muslim country. to make da'wah. So our job isn't to just be in a bubble and be alone and like not show people Islam. Our job is actually to embody Islam and show people, and that even people who are you want to say bad influence, our children can actually be a good influence on them. So it can be the reverse. It's not always going to be the bad affecting the good. It can happen, but we have to give that confidence and almost like encourage them that they can be setting an example and not being a follower as well.
Jazakallah khair. And also, Sister Mona, this question is specifically for you. If you can quickly answer this one, because we are way out of time now. I just want to ask the last question after this.
There's so much more to talk about, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
So, how important is it for parents to acquire pedagogy skills when it comes to homeschooling journey? So I don't think it's necessarily important, but for sure, when you homeschool, it's not just an educational journey for your children, it's one for yourself. And I feel like as you go through it and you read more books and you see more thoughts and different kind of, approaches out there, you start to get a sense of what aligns with your values. So I did mention earlier, I kind of went into a more unschooling kind of attitude. And part of that is because when I studied educational systems across the world, I saw that some of these systems that are in place and the standards which were mentioned a few times, like just teaching your children up to the school standards for each country or whatever, a lot of them are very artificially created. So we're forcing children to kind of be put into these by age 7, they should know these things, by age 10. And that's always changing. It's just like religion, right? We know in Islam, there's absolutes. But when it comes to everything else, there is no absolute with learning, because the children learn at different paces. So when it comes to pedagogy, you're going to find that when you're getting to know your child, it can help to know theories and to know how to approach things, because it can give you a sense of where would you fit in the bigger system. So let's say in America, we know the system is based off of what? It's like factory schooling, where they're trying to control. It's a very economic-based system where class is an issue, race is an issue. So many things are happening there. And so when you know that and you choose to exit that, you're choosing a different pedagogical approach for your child. Maybe you want to teach them according to Islamic tradition. How is that going to look for you? You're probably going to have to do research on, there are books out there on Islamic education, tarbiyah. What does that mean? I mean, me being I didn't grow up Muslim, and a lot of Muslims who do grow up in Muslim environments, but it's still not Islamic-based tarbiyah. A lot of them are mimicking Western ideals, unfortunately. I'm sure in Pakistan with Brother Azim, a lot of schools are just copying, what school's supposed to look like in the West, and they've lost the traditional education system that how people were taught as Muslims. It's a completely different system. If we look at how the Prophet Muhammad, for example, when he encouraged the Sahaba, he could see the strengths of each person and kind of guide them towards what they were good for. Someone would be a good translator, someone would make a good person of knowledge, someone would be a warrior, someone might make a good governor, but not everyone would fit those roles. So we as parents, we do have to do some research. Do you need to know every single pedagogical practice out there? No, but as you're going through it, you're going to want to learn, just because part of it is learning about yourself and how you work, how you relate with your children and everything like that.
Jazakumullah khair. And this last question to Sister Abdullah. Sorry, Sister Abdullah, you've been waiting for a long time, but this is the last question. So this is a question: if some of the kids are slow learners, their level of competence is not the same.
Different levels of homeschoolers in the same house?
No, can you please put some light on homeschooling a dyslexic? The people who are slow learners, the kids who learn slow?
No, dyslexic, learning disability. Children with learning disability.
Disability. Oh.
Special educational needs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have information about that. I'm sorry.
No problem. Anyone else can answer this question, please?
Specifically, dyslexia is an issue with how the brain works when they're reading. So for some children, they don't read letters, in the order like we read them. Their brain kind of sees it differently. So there are a lot of resources online for people with dyslexia. There's even a font, there's a special font where the letters are a bit heavier on the bottom that helps a child to be able to focus better and read the letters in order. So when I was in university, I actually worked with a child who had dyslexia. It was very difficult for him to read a full sentence. So what I would do is I made a special cutout paper that would only show one word at a time for him. And then we would show one word at a time, and then that helped him focus on the specific word, and then he was able to read. If he saw the whole thing, his brain would get confused because there was too many things happening. What I also did to help this specific child was I chose topics he was already familiar with, so he had this confidence, he could recognize the words. So he was really into football. So I chose articles, and he was small, he was like 10, but he was able to read high-level articles about football because he knew the words like scrimmage and like all the words I didn't even know. He recognized it, so when he saw the word, he would know how to read that word. He knew the word first of all, then he could read it, and that built up his confidence. So then he could read other words he was less familiar with. So there are like little things you can do like this to help a dyslexic child, inshallah. But the resources are like so huge out there, like there's no way to list all.
Correct. Absolutely. So the advice to the parent who has asked this question is that for such kids, obviously you need a little bit of expert advice, and you need to have a proper arrangement for them. So these sessions we can just give you some pointers, but for you specifically, there's a need to have a proper kind of a setup.
Yeah,
for
but don't think that they're not as smart. They just
Exactly.
their brain just works differently, so they just need a little help managing that. Yeah.
Yes, Sister Rhoda, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to recommend one thing, because I have worked with parents who have, children with learning disabilities or special education needs. And I think the most important thing is to have the right concept of education, right? The right concept of education. If they are academically slow, it does not set them out to be failures or losers out there, right? You need to be like, ultimately, what is it that you want to achieve, at the end of this like educational journey? And it's I always say, choose quality over quantity. Choose quality over quantity, because they struggle to digest information or to work with print. You can always focus on character building, have meaningful, deep conversations. Again, teach them routine, life skills, focus on life skills, cooking or baking or whatever is out there. All of this overall will help up to this, bringing up this child, right? It doesn't necessarily equal to academics. Like schooling and educational experience does not necessarily equal to academics. And if they are academically slow, it's not the end of the world. Just focus on life skills and character building, and teach them to follow routine, and inshallah they will inshallah they will learn.
Mr. Abdullah, this is the last question for you, please. Do homeschool children have over dependency on parents?
It's like raising a child. When the child born, he doesn't know how to walk. You teach them how to walk, and then let them walk by themselves. So homeschooling and education is like that. In the beginning, you sit with them, you try to help them, give them the tools that they need to learn with. Like, this is websites, this book, teach them how to read, give them resources, make the environment rich around them. Then step by step, he will start depending on himself. And I remember in my two older sons, when they reached 6th grade, they didn't want me to teach them. They were like, I want to learn by myself. I want to use my capabilities. I don't want you to be helping me now. I'm able to do that by myself. Even if he struggled after that, but he has the inside him that he can do that. So step by step, you can teach them how to do that. It's not like you teach them all the time and that's it. No, give them the tools. Tell them this website is helping you in math. This, you can read this. Look at that. Sit and watch the documentaries. Take them to the nature. It's like everything can help them to have the tools to be independent. Because in the secondary school, this is when they walk by themselves. Like before 6 years old and in elementary, this is when you help them. And after that, they just walk by themselves. So step by step, it just needs some, and it's different between a child and the other one. Some children they start early. Like they are, especially if they have siblings older than them. You know, like my third son is independent. He learned faster than his older brothers, not because he's smarter, but because he sees his brothers learn fast, you know, in this way. So he wants to be like them, and he has some knowledge from them, you know. So he's faster in taking the tools and start being independent than his older brothers. So it's just like give them the tool for them to work by themselves.
Naam.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khair. Yes, anyone else?
Yeah, could I just add something? It's
Sure,
actually,
sure.
it's very ironic. People actually assume that because we call it homeschooling or home education, that they're so dependent on their parents. But actually, it's the opposite. It's people who go to school becomes so dependent on the schedules and the teachers and a system
I
to
agree with you,
kind of
Mona.
guide them along. They actually end up more babied to the point where when they go to university and now they have to do their own schedule and make class on time, they're like,
Yes.
they can't even keep track of themselves, like, and well, they don't fail, but you know, they struggle. And so it's actually the homeschoolers I actually find are way more independent, like way more brave even. So I used to do like the walks, and I remember my kids would just be scrambling all over the place, like, you know, very brave, very like, and others would be kind of scared, like, Mom, am I allowed to do that? Like, you know, because they're used to being in school, you have to get in line, you're so disciplined in this sort of factory-like way. You have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. Like everything is so controlled. Where at home, they
True.
actually have more opportunities to learn how to do so many things. I mean, my kids were changing diapers by the time they're like, you know, 4 or 5. They're helping to change the little ones. They're involved with the cooking.
They were not changing their own, I hope.
What my oldest actually did, she changed her own diaper. She's very independent. She's 1.5. She insists she want to do it herself. So, you know, so I'm just saying, like, actually, I find homeschool kids have way more opportunity to become independent earlier because their parents can they actually have the time to, you know, start their own projects, learn how to cook, you know, create the whole meal themselves, take care of each other. And, you know, as a busy mom, sometimes like I'm busy with a newborn, for example, the older kids, I'm like, okay, you make the snacks, you do this. Each one's in charge of these different things. They actually have more opportunities to become independent because they're at home living life and not stuck in the school, you know, 8 hours a day, however long it is. And in some places, like in China, they're like all day school and then tutoring and everything. They don't even have a chance to learn like basic life skills of taking care of the house or themselves. All it is academics, right? So it's very unhealthy. So I actually find homeschool kids are way more independent, generally speaking, than just because I think as parents, we have to kind of get them involved in helping in the house more. So, alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. Final words from Sister Laura. We are 40 minutes over time, so just final words from Sister Laura, and then we'll wrap it up, inshallah.
Oh, that's so kind of you that you give me the honor to say the final words. Actually, I really admired from all of you, all the participants today, and it was a pleasure to be here, and all the nice questions we received from our audience. I think the last word is probably that when somebody looks to start homeschooling, as we mentioned already, we mentioned slightly before, is about educating yourself. If you want to be a teacher, a learner, homeschooling parent, you have to start educating yourself. And this is all about is if you have a basic knowledge about yourself, find have the right mindset. Don't put too much pressure about yourself. We talked about perfectionism. This is all about it. And if we do put the right intention and Allah, we pray to Allah, what we're doing is for the sake of Allah, He will put barakah in it and we shouldn't worry.
Jazakumullah khair. Very well said. Once again, I'm honored to have all of you today on the show. Jazakallah khair, Brother Azim, Sister Muna, Sister Lara, Sister Rhoda, Sister Mullah Abdullah. May Allah reward you all for your time, for your efforts, for your patience, for your contributions, and for your advice. May Allah reward you abundantly, not only in this life, but also in the hereafter. On top of that, Jazakallah khair for the audience, asking some really important questions for our kids. Obviously, for us, as parents, This is what really it boils down to, that which direction our kids are taking, whether they are going to be becoming really relevant to the society at large and really become the real Islamic heroes which we want them to become. So Jazakallah khair everyone. Just a reminder for next, before I do a reminder for next week, or rather I'll just make an announcement for Thursday in fact. I've pasted all the links for the whatever we have discussed and whatever links I've received from various participants and the panelists. What I'll try to do is I'll try to paste, because this is live streamed on various multiple channels, so I might not be able to paste links everywhere. So just go into the comments section to see the links. Inshallah, they will be available over there. That is number one. The second thing is that because alhamdulillah we are going to be having inshallah Eid on Friday and Saturday in different parts of the Muslim world, so we will not be having the usual Sunday night raw session on this Sunday, but in effect we are going to be having a brilliant session with Sister Fatima Barakatullah from England on the topic of Islam and the veil on Thursday at the same time, which is 6 p.m. UK, 8 p.m. Saudi, and 10 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. So this Thursday on the 30th of July is our session with Sister Fatima Barakatullah, inshallah, on the topic Islam and the veil. If you have any particular questions on that topic, please do send them to sun.night.raw@gmail.com. That is sun.night.raw@gmail.com. So Jazakallah khair once again, and inshallah I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.